And you want to be able to make sure that, if like you mentioned, if someone falls ill or the business owner wants to take, 2 weeks off, that they can leave the business and not have to be bombarded with calls while they're away to see those key tasks and what needs to be done and how often it needs to be done.
Welcome to the Business Behind Your Business, conversations to help your business grow and thrive. Hi, I'm Paul Sweeney, founder of Pretium Solutions, chartered accountants and certified business advisors, hosting the Business Behind Your Business. Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm Paul Sweeney, chartered accountant and business advisor, and today we're going to look at this topic of what happens when a key employee goes missing in action. Either they don't turn up for work or they resign suddenly, and we're left with this situation of who knows what they do and how to do it. So how do we avoid that situation where somebody doesn't turn up to work and people have to cover their role or the functions that they're performing? Or perhaps even more specific to small and medium businesses, what happens when you as the owner don't turn up, and all of that knowledge about how things are done and where to purchase, who to talk to at your suppliers, and how you want things done consistently. When all of that knowledge is in your head and you're not available, what do your team do? What do your employees do? How do they manage? So we're going to have a look at how we can overcome that issue and make your business run more efficiently. So the best way to do this is to bring in an expert on the subject. So I've got with me today Mitch Kenny from SafeWrite, Mitch is now the director of SafeWrite, which is part of the Mouse software brand. That's MAUS, not mouse as in Mickey Mouse, but MAUS software. And Mitch's focus is on helping small, medium businesses develop and control what goes on, the policies, the processes, documents, making it more efficient, manageable, and an easy-to-use system that anybody can follow. So Mitch has been working with Mouse over 4 years now, so he's got a lot of experience in that field and is well on top of how to help business owners, managers improve their systems and comply with some of those or many compliance obligations that we now face in our businesses on a day-to-day basis. So Mitch, welcome to the microphone.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here. And I think, look, if we talk about documenting procedures and policies, it can seem like a bit of a dry topic to start with. And it's often one of the last things we want to do as a business owner. But there's some very key reasons why a business owner needs to have those. And I mentioned, the situation where all the knowledge is in somebody's head and they don't turn up or they're not available. We've got an issue there. But there are plenty of other reasons. And look, from your experience, what are some of the key, benefits that a business would get from documenting how they do things?
Yeah, well, Paul, I think you probably highlighted the most obvious one there in terms of having less reliance on a single employee. And I think you're right in terms of the businesses that I speak with, a lot of that does fall on the business owner themselves. So a lot of those day-to-day tasks, a lot of those key processes are ultimately shackling the business owner into those operations. So having a systemized way or a document that is that you're able to show and provide to staff to show those key, weekly, monthly, even daily processes is really allowing the business owner to, spend their time working on how to grow the business rather than the day-to-day operation. And that also leads to, the next point, which is showing some of those opportunities for scale and growth. So allowing a structured way to train and onboard new staff. It doesn't have to rely on, a single employee taking a week out of their time to train up a new employee. If they have some of those, key processes and key things to get started on inside a document or a procedure manual that they can then use. And even if we look at expanding, opening up new job sites or offices, to have an off-the-shelf framework, a Bible, as it's, a lot of times referred to, a way to have an off-the-shelf document that will be able to, have that key processes and what needs to be done. So you can see what needs to be done, how often it needs to be done, and the key steps that need to be followed.
Yeah, and onboarding, you mentioned onboarding employees, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, that when we've got more and more people working in a remote environment, that onboarding process needs to be more structured and documented and easy to follow, because we can't rely on the situation we've traditionally had of somebody in the business actually hand-holding and showing them physically how to do things. We need to have clearer instructions when we introduce a new employee to our business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just kind of helps with the overall efficiency and improving the efficiency, making sure that people's times are spent wisely, and certainly in that onboarding stage where the new start's going to have the most amount of questions and going to be the most confused. Having a document that they can always fall back on is going to be really helpful in their development.
Yeah, and I think you also referred to growing the business and scale and efficiencies. And as a small business, when you start a small business, you tend to be everything. You're the accounts receivable, you're the sales, your inventory management, marketing, accounting. You're all of those functions. And one way to remove yourself from some of those roles is to actually have a process that somebody else can follow, that you can give to somebody else. And if you've got clear instructions, clear documentation, delegating that function is easier to do, but also easier to ensure that the outcomes are at a consistent level.
Yeah, exactly right. And you want to be able to make sure that, if like you mentioned, if someone falls ill or the business owner wants to take, 2 weeks off, that they can leave the business and not have to be bombarded with calls while they're away to see those key tasks and what needs to be done and how often it needs to be done. I mean, the amount of times that I speak with business owners who just want to be able to have that, that's their idea of success, is to be able to have the business work autonomously without them being as hands-on. Yeah, that's just going to be really, really beneficial for the business owners in the long run.
And you touched on something that really hits a nerve whenever I talk to a business owner, is when was the last time they actually had a proper holiday from their business and the business could function without them being there? And in most cases, we're talking years, if at all, that they've been able to walk away from the business for a period and it functioned without them. And you can't do that unless you've got good systems in place that people can follow.
Yeah, exactly right. That's kind of the key to make the business working on its own and have less reliance on the business owner itself.
Mm-hmm. So how do we get to this point? Because one of the biggest, I guess, not so much a complaint, but a point of resistance is it's going to take me too long to do all of this. And I think, when we see that barrier and say, look, it's going to take me time to do it, we're going to go with the activity that's going to produce the most immediate benefit to us. We're not going to look at the long term of improving our system. So how do we remove that barrier?
Well, I think the key thing that you mentioned in that kind of statement there, Paul, was it's going to take me too long to do it, assuming that it's all on the business owner or the kind of key manager there to write all these themselves. In my experience, that's almost potentially the worst thing that can happen. Have the business owner write out all these processes. In a lot of situations, we actually encourage the key users, the actual people doing these jobs, to kind of collaboratively work and build out those documents themselves. They're the ones who will be performing these functions. They know the key processes, the steps that need to happen. So really, it's a collaborative effort holistically to be able to, number one, document what you're currently doing, but also use that as an opportunity to reassess your current systems and processes. And as always, look at opportunities and ways that you can potentially improve and possibly find some more efficiencies internally that you might not necessarily or have regularly have done if you hadn't done this project in the first place.
And I think you've probably hit on what I see as a second barrier here, is waiting until they design the perfect process or system before they document it, before they implement. I think you've mentioned that 2 stages. You document what you do and then you look at refining it. Once you've actually put it on paper, it's very easy to say, well, hang on, why are we doing it that way? We could actually eliminate 2 or 3 steps in this process and be more. I think, waiting until you get it perfect. I watched a movie recently, Ford versus Ferrari. I'm not a motor vehicle fan or anything, but it was interesting. And there's a scene where Matt Damon's sitting in the waiting room, about to see Mr. Ford and get told off for not performing at peak level, and he's looking at this little piece of or envelope that's shipped around the office, and it goes through 4 or 5 different sets of hands before it actually makes it to Mr. Ford. And we look at how many extra unnecessary steps in our process do we have, but it's not until we look at it, or somebody else looks at it for us and says, you could actually eliminate that step of the process and still achieve the same outcome.
Exactly. And a lot of times it doesn't fully get realized until you take the time, you take a step back from, as I mentioned, performing those day-to-day actions to really just sit down and spend some time documenting, writing out how things are currently being done, and then it makes it a lot more obvious and a lot more easier to identify those gaps and where some of those efficiencies can be achieved.
And sometimes we don't know where to start. So is there something that can help us with getting started?
Yeah, so there are a couple of typically the best way to kick off some of these projects is to think about what needs to be documented. General rule of thumb is if there's a certain question that needs to be asked about how to perform a task or to do it to a certain role, then you need to have policies and procedures written down for that, or at the very least a procedure written down for that. So it's really difficult to know where to start, and generally there are even legislative requirements from a HR perspective or a health and safety perspective that need to come into place as well. So under WHS model law, all businesses need to have an emergency plan in place. Similarly, you need to have a process for how you report on injuries and things like that. So it can be difficult to look at some of those obligations that need to be addressed. From our side of things, in the type of businesses that we help out with at Mouse and at SafeWrite, we have off-the-shelf templates and policies and procedures, have a lot of content already written. So about 70 to 90% of that content is already available to some of our users. So really easy to have that quick and easy set of documents off the shelf that really helps with kickstarting and basically providing a blueprint of what users and what most businesses need to have in order to meet those obligations, and like I said, to help systemize and document some of those key processes.
And in saying that, Mitch, you've mentioned a couple of things that I think most small and medium business owners aren't even aware that they have an obligation to do. The emergency plan or the workplace health and safety policies and processes. I think a lot of small business owners, when we start a business, we're not aware of all the different aspects of what we're doing and all of the requirements. So having a set of templates to start with, which actually include all of these extra responsibilities that are legislated, that's got to be a great start.
Exactly right, and it just helps cover you internally for any potential issues that might come up down the track. For any of the current users that we do have, those documents undergo regular change as well. So anytime a change happens to the Australian legislation, or a lot of the standards that we deal with are from the ISO, for the International Organization of Standards, they undergo regular periodic reviews to the standard, and we keep a finger on the pulse to make sure that all of those documents that we have, that we provide to our users, that they stay up to date.
And look, that's a big job for anybody, but for somebody running their business, keeping on top of those things must be hard. Because I know, look, we had a lot of changes in the way we do things in the last 2 years. COVID created a lot of change to how we do things, and it's easy to ignore the less exciting changes that we're required to deal with, because there's been a lot of new legislation passed in Australia in the last 18 months that most business owners aren't aware of and aren't aware how they affect their day-to-day operations. So having a framework where you actually are notified of those changes and how it affects your policies and processes, that's certainly a good thing for business to be more aware of what changes have happened that affect your, statutory obligations, as well as, best practice of how you can improve things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So look, we've got this great tool, a set of templates with 70%, and in most cases it's going to be probably closer to 90% because a lot of businesses will be covered fairly standard. Now, obviously, every business is different. No two businesses are the same, so there's going to be some modifications. How easy is it to modify from templates like that?
Yeah, so we designed it in a way so that 100% of the content that we do provide is customizable. You're right, no two businesses are the same, but also the businesses that come to us in different stages as well. Some have nothing in place and they need to use mostly our documents. Some have 20%, 50%, 80% of the way there, and they want to be able to kind of chop and change, import their own documents, and kind of collaboratively use that as well. So that was a really key feature for us is to make sure that while we do give you a lot of content, give the users a lot of content, that we have it in a way so that they can really customize and make it their own. Because at the end of the day, if it's just a generic a set of templates that they have to work towards, if staff don't buy into it, if it's not applicable to them, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. We want to really make sure that users engage with this and see some of those efficiencies and comply with those requirements that we touched on earlier.
Yeah, if you don't get the engagement and people don't take ownership for it, it is just a box ticking exercise, really. That our policies and procedures, yes, tick, we've done that. Now, can we move on to something more exciting? And I guess that ownership, but also ownership and understanding of how it helps them perform their job better.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that really comes down to those key policies in the most part at the beginning of a manual that outlines things like your job roles, what your responsibilities are, to really hone in on what their position description actually is. So they're in the best situation to perform to the best of their ability.
And look, when we get something like this, so a set of templates, how do you ask for more help? How are you supported in this process as a business owner?
Yeah, so at Mouse, as you know, Paul, we have a long standing partner network that we lean on for business owners that come to us and say, well, look, we've got all the documents in place, but we just need a little bit more hand holding in terms of developing and really improving those there. So we provide all the documents, we provide an online platform to manage it all, and then if the users need a little bit more assistance, we touch base with our network of consultants, and we can point the user in the right direction depending on what area they're specializing in. And we have a range of partners in our network who are more than happy to assist, and they're obviously familiar with the platform as well, so really easy to engage with. And
so it also comes back to this whole concept that we were talking about at the beginning, is that it's not just the business owner that's doing this process. You engage the right people to help you improve your processes, improve your business, and help your team run more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. We encourage not just the business owner who perhaps gets set up with these tools, but any number of employees. We have active give access to up to 10 people right off the bat who can come in, attend training, get trained up on the tools. And that's, as we mentioned earlier, really helpful to collaboratively build up and start documenting those processes.
Look, I'm just curious, Mitch, if I'm in a business and we do have these policies and processes in place, how do I know that the version I'm working on or looking at is the most up-to-date version?
Yeah, so typically, best practice dictates that all sets of processes or key company documents, you have a version control or a version number. That way, you can see when what version this document is, and if it's been superseded by a later document. Ideally, in a best case scenario, you'll also have kind of a timestamp of when it's been modified and last updated as well. That's something, actually, as you mentioned it, that is automatically done inside our platform. So really easy to, as soon as you make a change, it'll ask you to update the version number. That'll timestamp the document, who it was that was logged in that made those changes as well. So that takes care of all of those processes there, and really easy. No matter if you're viewing it online or potentially exporting to an offline copy, you still have that little table there that has the version control information. So really helpful to see whatever version they're viewing. They can see what the version number is, the status, if it's in progress, if it's been approved, if it's been superseded, and who it was that approved it, who modified it. So all of that key information inside of there already, which is going to be really helpful for the business owners to be able to see a document and know if it's up to date or if it's been, outdated or anything like that.
So we've talked quite a bit about documenting and the processes and the tools to help do that. I guess the system is only as good as its compliance, whether people are actually following the system. What do business owners do to make sure that their team and I'm going to say, and the actual business owner themselves follow the systems that they've documented or created and are responsible for that?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And it probably leans itself more towards the question of how do we notify and how do we make sure that staff are accountable to those processes, particularly around a change in policy as well. How do we make sure that if we've changed a procedure in terms of how we've done something, if we've found a more efficient way to do it, how can we make sure that a staff of 10 or 20 people, that they are notified and that they essentially are compliant with those changes? Typically, how businesses have done it recently, in the past, is that you would have a single document that you would then require everyone to kind of come into the office and sign off, say they agree with those changes. For the users in the SafeWrite and the mouse platform, we've kind of circumnavigated that a little bit. We actually have a process where you can actually send out those documents to staff, to any subcontractors or any other interested third parties. Send them an email automatically and say, hey, here's a list of all the changes that we've made. Can you please click on the link and review the most up-to-date set of documents? At the end of that, after they've read that, it'll ask them whether they accept or reject what they've read. So it actually gives the respondent, the employee in most cases, the opportunity to read those processes and provide feedback. Once again, we want this to be a collaborative exercise. If there's something that the employee has noticed who performs these tasks, if there's something that they can identify that they can suggest to make that process more efficient, then we want to really encourage them to do that as well. So we have your accept and reject button, but also your feedback box as well. So you can write down, you can provide your feedback, provide your inputs, and really help out in collaboratively building and improving that system as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And look, as the owner or the manager of different areas or different teams within the business, the ongoing day-to-day compliance, how do businesses make sure that people are actually not just saying they accept the rules, but actually follow them?
Yeah, so particularly around things that the type of businesses that I deal with around kind of safety compliance and quality compliance, there's added kind of risk there associated with performing those processes. So inside the SafeWrite platform, there's a kind of complementary management dashboard. So things like incidences, risks, corrective actions, the things that are already outlined and documented inside those policies and procedures, we provide all the online registers to be able to improve and implement that more effectively. So rather than relying on someone coming in and reading a procedure, reading a form and performing that task, we have an online register where you can log an incident, log a non-conformance as they occur. And while it's part of that, inside that online platform, makes it really easy for a manager or a business owner to be notified of when a new incident has occurred or a risk has been logged, so that they're on the ball there as well in terms of some of those key processes.
Mm-hmm. And then you've got all your documentation if you need to support a claim or for insurances or even just to prove that you've complied with the legislative requirements for your business.
Exactly. Most of the businesses that I deal with, they need to get these policies and procedures in place as part of winning a new job or a new tender. They try to submit the tender, and then it asks for all these documentation, all this paperwork to say that they're performing to the best of their ability and that they have best practice processes in place around particularly safety and quality management. So they get in touch with us and get these documents so that they can support themselves and say that we have these procedures around incident management, non-conformances, and really helps them beef them up a little bit to win some of those jobs.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, because I think going back 10 or 15 years, we would have looked at these policies, processes, and even ISO compliance and thought, well, that's the domain of the bigger businesses. They're the only ones that spend the money on that it takes too much time, it's too complicated, and we don't need it. But we're seeing a lot of requirements filtering down to smaller and small, medium businesses, actually stipulating that you have to have these processes and documentation in place. Otherwise, you will not get the work from government and other larger businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. A few of the people that I deal with, they have been working with, a particular council or something like Vic Roads for 5-10 years, and then all of a sudden certain requirements change and they quickly need to have these documents in place. In terms of their internal processes, nothing's changed. They still want to engage with the contractor themselves, but it's just an added layer or an added barrier that that's starting to affect smaller businesses to stop them from engaging with some of those government level contracts.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about a lot of reasons why you should have documentation and processes in place and systems that you follow. Just from efficiency, scaling, being able to get better outcomes from your team, free up your time as a business owner and make sure your business operates when you're not there. And then we've looked at the legislative and I guess the business cases for why you need to have them in place. The key question here, Mitch, is how do we get hold of it?
Well, us at Mouse and SafeWrite, we're really hands-on to make sure that you can, not only get a hold of the actual templates that you require, but also can evaluate the online platform as well. It is worth mentioning that although you have the documents in place today, we best practice and typically ISO standards dictate that you kind of review these every 6 months and you continue to control them. So that's what our platform allows you to do as well. A cloud-based portal that will update the documents as they change to the legislation, keep things controlled, as I mentioned, send out those documents for approval and acknowledgement there as well. So that online platform takes care of all of that as well. We're available. You can reach out to us at mouse.com.au or you can email in. I think sales@mouse.com.au would be the best email to reach out to, or our best number is 0299071669.
Great, that's fantastic. And we'll repeat key details in the show notes. And there's also a link that we can provide for anyone listening to the podcast for a free trial for this platform. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly right. So really easy to get in touch and set up a free trial. Typically, that'll give you a good indication of the content that we provide, but also the online platform to help with that ongoing management as well.
Fantastic. So I think you've solved a problem for business owners today, Mitch, or you've highlighted a problem, but also the benefits to them. And I think the benefits outweigh the effort in achieving it. And Mouse and SafeWrite have provided a tool to make it easier to do this, to document your policies, your processes, and your compliance. So I think the next step here is to have a look at the system, sign up for the trial, sign up for SafeWrite, and make sure you've got those processes and policies in place, and then start taking your business to the next level. Anything else you want to add, Mitch? Any key points you want to make? Summarise.
No, look. I think you hit the nail on the head. When we look at the benefits of documenting those processes, a lot of people think of it as a risk to not have it in place in terms of things like liability and making sure that they have the up to date legislation. But it's also important to look at the opportunities as well, not only from an efficiency point of view, but also some of those jobs that you can win and government jobs that are out there that really are starting to ask for these policies and procedures and compliant policies and procedures in place to be able to, as a bit of a barrier for a lot of businesses. So to have that in place will be really put people in the right stead to win some of those jobs and tenders.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thanks for your time today, Mitch. Thanks for coming on the podcast and for sharing with us a great solution to a problem that's very real for all businesses and a lot of benefit there. So encourage people to jump into the show notes, sign up for, the free trial and have a look at the SafeWrite system, which is part of the Mouse business tools. So once again, Mitch, thank you for joining us today on The Business Behind Your Business.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Do you have a question you'd like our team of experts to answer? If you do, send your question to podcast@thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. To hear more from the business behind your business, don't forget to subscribe using your favourite podcast player. Or you can visit the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website.